Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu cancels high-level Israeli delegation's planned visit to Washington after US abstains from UN resolution calling for Gaza ceasefire. Hush money case continues to haunt Donald Trump. A New York judge sets April 15th as the trial date. Odds that Trump will face at least one verdict before facing voters on November 5th increase. New Zealand joins US and UK in accusing China of cyber espionage. New Zealand says its parliamentarian entities in 2021 were a victim. Russian president says radical Islamists carried out concert attack, suggests Kyiv may have played a role. Ukraine denies any involvement. Death toll from attack rises to 139. Virat Kohli's 100 T20 half-centuries sphered Royal Challengers Bengaluru to a 4-wicket win over Punjab Kings. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has officially cancelled an Israeli delegation's visit to the White House this week. In a post on social media platform X, the Prime Minister's office said that the decision was made in light of the change in the US position. The US decision to abstain on the vote prompted Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to cancel a scheduled trip to the US by two of his top advisors. The US abstention on Monday's vote allowed the latest resolution on Gaza to pass when the other 14 members of the 15-strong council voted yes. The resolution put forward by the 10 non-permanent members of the Security Council demands an immediate ceasefire for the month of Ramadan, the immediate and unconditional release of the hostages, and the urgent need to expand the flow of aid into Gaza. Jody Jacobs joins us to tell us more.
Just before that vote, Ramesh, because I wanted to explain to you those unusual scenes, because minutes before the meeting actually got underway, we saw this huge huddle of top diplomats inside the council with last-minute negotiations, because the push here from the elected 10 members of the UN Security Council was to ensure that this vote does not get vetoed by the United States, even though they had said on Friday that the intention was that they don't necessarily agree with the resolution or the language thereof, but they participated in the negotiations which took place over the weekend. And of course, as you've now been reporting, that resolution is now passed. What it ultimately calls for is an immediate ceasefire for the remainder of the month of Ramadan. So there's about 2 weeks left of Ramadan. An immediate ceasefire now needs to be implemented. Also, there's a line that calls for the immediate release of all of the hostages, which now needs to be undertaken, and then unimpeded humanitarian access into Gaza. Now, we also know this comes on the back of reports yesterday by the United Nations, where they said that Israel has now decided that they're going to block all aid going into northern Gaza. So, of course, this legally binding document, which is a UN Security Council resolution, which is the only legal sort of binding document from the United Nations, is now going to force Israel, of course, to ensure that that the ceasefire, together with Hamas, is implemented, that Hamas releases all of the hostages, and of course that they don't impede any further access of humanitarian aid into Gaza. The resolution goes a step further in saying that this is obviously the first part of it, but ultimately the end goal here is for a sustained permanent ceasefire within Gaza.
All right, DD India's correspondent Akshay Dongri joins us with more. Akshay, just a while back, we saw Jody's report wherein he talked of the resolution. I would want you to explain to us in detail what does the resolution mean and how binding is it, to what extent it is binding to the parties, and also what next in the war after this development?
Well, Preeti, the most important question is now arising around the world is about the fact that what happens now? Now that
Yes.
the United Nations Security Council has in fact called for a ceasefire, the vote has passed. US has abstained from vetoing or supporting this particular the demand by the United Nations Security Council, the resolution. Now, what happens? So, according to the 103 UN Charter, the United Nations Security Council resolution is legally binding. As a matter of fact, more than legally binding, this will be a moral obligation for Israel now that the United Nations Security Council has passed the resolution for an immediate ceasefire in the conflict that's going on in Gaza. More than the legal responsibility, it will be the moral obligation for Israel to, in fact, take some certain massive actions as far as the ongoing conflict is concerned. From what we have been seeing in the past few months, especially, is the fact that the Israeli government has been ignoring the calls that have been coming in from the major international bodies for a ceasefire. In fact, the fact that the United Nations Security Council wasn't able to pass a resolution on the ongoing conflict was a sort of a victory for Israel at the international forum. That despite the fact that the conflict has dragged on for about 5 months, there still wasn't any resolution to in fact, stop the conflict and stop the deaths that have been going on in this entire war between Israel and Hamas. So now, more than the legal obligation, Israel will have to look at the moral obligation of it, because the United Nations Security Council, though is extremely old. There have been no changes in the body. It still holds relevance as one of the highest body of the United Nations, and that exactly is the reason why this resolution that has been passed by the United Nations means a lot for the ongoing conflict, and that exactly is the reason why what we are seeing in terms of news that Israel has cancelled the visit to the US of this high level delegation. That, in fact, is a direct fallout of this particular resolution that has been passed. And now it seems that for the 2 weeks, at least, for the remaining of the month of Ramadan, there will be some sort of a ceasefire that will be implemented, that Israel will be legally binding. It will be forced rather to implement that particular ceasefire in the region.
All right. Akshay, also explain to us how do you gauge this change of stance by the US, because we've seen that all this while US has been very vocal with regard to the developments, when we talk of the war. What do you make of this change of heart when the US abstains from this resolution?
It clearly is a major decision by the United States, in fact, Preeti, because this change of heart changes everything. All of the five United Nations Security Council members that are permanent members have the right, or they have the power of veto. So unless all of the countries do not support, or if even if one country says that we do not support any particular resolution, it cannot be passed by the United Nations Security Council. And as Jody has also pointed out, that this is perhaps the only major forum where if a resolution is passed, it is legally binding. So that's the power of the United Nations Security Council. That's why the world has been asking for changes in the United Nations Security Council, changes in accordance to the contemporary geopolitical situation around the world, and that's why this abstention by the US and not vetoing like it has been doing for the past 7 to 8 times, as far as the resolutions were concerned, changed a lot. Now, what changed exactly? It also has to do a lot with the public of the United States. From what we have been seeing initially, the public support was in favor, clearly was in favor of Israel. The kind of terrorist attack that was carried out by Hamas inside the Israeli territory, the public support was clearly with Israel and with Israeli public, and how the action was taken against Hamas inside Gaza was majorly supported by US. So it has a lot to do with the domestic politics of US as well, along with the international politics. Because while the public perception has been changing with the kind of activities, with the kind of action that Israel has been taking inside Gaza, in terms of taking action against Hamas. The second fact is US also realized that it cannot work along with Israel in a silo. While the world has been calling for ceasefire, it can do so much to in fact block the resolutions by the United Nations Security Council, and now with increasing voices, not just from adversaries but also from the allies coming in favor of a ceasefire, United States had to succumb to this increasing pressure along with the government of the US. In fact, the president of the United States has also been urging Israel to do more in terms of preventing the humanitarian crisis that has evolved out of this particular conflict. So both the domestic politics along with the international pressure has led to this change of heart of the United States, which is why US has abstained from vetoing this particular resolution, and it has been passed by the United Nations Security Council, both permanent and non-permanent members. Preeti?
All right, Akshay, thank you for joining in with that explanation and those details. The White House said it was very disappointed by the decision of Israeli Prime Minister. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said the Biden administration is kind of perplexed by Netanyahu's decision to cancel a planned Israeli delegation's visit to Washington to discuss alternatives to an attack of the southern Gaza city of Rafah after the U.S. abstained on a UN ceasefire resolution. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that Netanyahu's statement was a bit surprising and unfortunate.
There were issues that we had issues with which we had concerns related to that resolution. The fact that it did not condemn Hamas's terrorist attacks of October 7th. That's why we didn't vote for it. But the reason we didn't veto it is because there were also things in that resolution that were consistent with our long-term position. Most importantly, that there should be a ceasefire and that there should be a release of hostages, which is what we understood also to be the government of Israel's position. So it is a bit surprising and unfortunate that they're not going to apparently attend these meetings.
Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said that Israel could not end the war on Hamas while there are still hostages in Gaza. The Israeli Defense Minister is on a visit to U.S. where he's expected to meet his counterpart Lloyd Austin, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and other senior U.S. officials.
We have no moral right to stop the war. While there are still hostages held in Gaza, the lack of a decisive victory in Gaza may bring us closer to a war in the north. We will operate against Hamas everywhere, including in places where we have not been yet. We will identify an alternative to Hamas so that the IDF may complete its mission.
You're watching DD India News Hour. We're heading for a short break, but after the break, Ukraine continues to reel under the crippling aftermath of the war. Engineers leave no stone unturned to restore power to the households in Kharkiv and Odessa. Belgian farmers will protest in Brussels during the EU meet. And endangered species including snakes, frogs and a crocodile are the new centre of attraction at the London Zoo.
That never stops, where information shapes our reality. One app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Welcome back. After the break, you're watching DD India News Hour. Let's get to more international updates. Donald Trump's criminal hush money case is set to go to trial on April 15th. The former president's legal team wanted the trial dropped or substantially delayed after federal investigators released a batch of documents they deemed relevant to the case. But in a win for Trump, his bond in a separate civil case has been substantially reduced. William Denslow reports from New York.
Donald Trump and his legal team headed to court here in Lower Manhattan on Monday, hoping that the criminal case he faces tied to allegations that he paid hush money to a porn star in the lead up to the 2016 presidential election would be dismissed, or at least the trial would be substantially delayed. March 25th was originally the date planned for that trial to begin. However, recently, a little earlier this month, the judge delayed it by 30 days. This came after a huge tranche of court documents were released by federal investigators. Now, Donald Trump's team said that the handling and the late release of these documents were grounds for the case to be dismissed. The judge didn't see things that way. Instead, he decided to keep his ruling as it was after his initial revision, which means that April 15th will be the first of Donald Trump's 4 criminal cases that he faces to go to trial. Donald Trump has denied wrongdoing in those counts, pleading not guilty to all 34 felonies that he faces in that regard. However, he was granted somewhat of a win on Monday. Recently, Donald Trump was ordered to pay around $450 million after he was found liable for fraud. However, an appeals court here in New York has ruled that instead of having to pay that amount, he now has to pay just a $175 million bond while his appeal continues. Donald Trump has 10 days to make that payment. He says he will do. He has railed against these cases here in New York, as well as the various other civil and criminal cases that he faces. He says that it's election interference, and he says it's essentially a product of the justice system becoming weaponized to hurt his re-election campaign. William Denslow in New York reporting for DD India.
US and British officials on Monday filed charges, imposed sanctions and accused Beijing of a sweeping cyber espionage campaign. Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden on Monday accused Chinese hackers of trying to break into email accounts of British lawmakers who were critical of China, and said a separate Chinese entity was behind the hack of its electoral watchdog that compromised millions of people's data. In response to the attempted hack in 2021, Britain imposed sanctions on 2 people and 1 company linked to state-backed Chinese hacking group APT31. Britain also said an unidentified Chinese state-affiliated hacking group was behind a separate 2021-22 cyber attack on Britain's Electoral Commission.
I can confirm today that Chinese state-affiliated actors were responsible for 2 malicious cyber campaigns targeting both our democratic institutions and parliamentarians. First, the compromise of the United Kingdom Electoral Commission between 2021 and 2022, which was announced last summer. And second, attempted reconnaissance activity against UK parliamentary accounts in a separate campaign in 2021.
The New Zealand government said it had raised concerns with the Chinese government about its involvement in a state-sponsored cyber hack on New Zealand's parliament in 2021, which was uncovered by the country's intelligence services. New Zealand's Foreign Minister Winston Peters said in a statement that foreign interference of this nature is unacceptable, and we have urged China to refrain from such activity in the future. The revelations that information was accessed through malicious cyber activity targeting New Zealand's parliamentarian entities comes as Britain and the US accused China of a wide-sweeping cyber espionage campaign. Russian President Vladimir Putin acknowledged on Monday that last week's deadly attack at a concert outside Moscow was carried out by radical Islamists. He, however, suggested that the shooting fits in a wider campaign of intimidation by Ukraine.
It is absolutely clear that the terrible crime committed on March 22 in the capital of Russia, this is an act of intimidation, as I already said. And immediately a question arises: who benefits from this? This atrocity may be just a link in a whole series of attempts by those who have been at war with our country since 2014 by the hands of the neo-Nazi Kiev regime. And the Nazis, as is well known, have never hesitated to use the dirtiest and most inhuman means to achieve their goals.
4 men of Tajik origin were remanded in custody on terrorism charges at Moscow's Bazmeny District Court on suspicion of carrying out the attack, the deadliest attack inside Russia in the last 2 decades. 3 others, also of Tajik origin, were remanded in custody on suspicion of complicity. Islamic State has said it was responsible for the attack, the death toll in which has risen to 139, with 182 people wounded. The shooting took place when 4 men burst into Crocus City Hall on Friday night, spraying bullets during a concert by the Soviet-era rock group Picnic. French President Emmanuel Macron has said that it would be cynical and counterproductive for Russia to blame Ukraine. Macron added that the gunmen concerned were part of an Islamist group that was behind foiled attempts to attack France over the past few months.
This attack was claimed by Islamic State, and the information available to us, to our intelligence services, as well as to our main partners, indicates indeed that it was an entity of the Islamic State which instigated and executed this attack. We must refrain from all types of instrumentalizing. I think that it would be both cynical and counterproductive for Russia itself and the security of its citizens to use this context to try and turn it against Ukraine.
Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council held a minute of silence on Monday for the victims of the Moscow attack. All 15 Security Council delegations stood and joined in, observing a minute of silence to present its condolences and sympathy to the government and people of Russia, and in the memory of the victims of the heinous and cowardly terrorist attack at the concert hall. France said it will increase the number of soldiers for its Operation Sentinel unit, which deals with handling terrorist threats. France's Prime Minister Gabriel Attal on Monday said an extra 4,000 members of the military would be put on standby for the Sentinel division, which guards sites such as railway stations, places of worship, schools and theatres across the country. Earlier on Monday, President Macron said that the gunmen who killed 139 people in Moscow terror attack were part of an Islamist State branch that was behind foiled attempts to attack France over the past few months. Let's get to a quick update on the ground situation in Ukraine. Now, engineers continue to work round the clock to restore power on Monday to households in 2 Ukrainian cities, Kharkiv and Odessa. Officials warned that damage caused by repeated Russian strikes on energy infrastructure could take years to repair. President Zelensky has urged residents of Kharkiv to look after themselves and their neighbors. Kharkiv is Ukraine's second largest city and a frequent target of Russian strikes. While in Odessa, Ukraine's top private energy provider, DTEK, has introduced emergency power cuts. Russia attacked Ukrainian generating and transmission facilities last week and over the weekend, causing blackouts in many regions. Senegal's president-elect Bassirou Diomaye Faye, a political newcomer popular among dissatisfied youth, promised to govern with humility and transparency. Faye is set to be declared the next president after his main rival called him to concede defeat. He thanked President Macky Sall and other candidates for respecting Senegal's democratic tradition by recognizing his victory well before the official results. Provisional results showed Faye with about 53.7% and Amadou Ba from the current ruling coalition with 36.2% based on tallies from 90% of the polling stations in the first round vote, the Electoral Commission said. Belgian farmers expected to protest with tractors in Brussels during a meeting of EU agriculture ministers, hoping to calm anger sparked in multiple EU countries about environmental standards seen as too strict and foreign imports. Ishan Garg tells us more from Brussels.
For the third time this year, tractors have rolled onto Brussels streets. Tuesday's protest comes just as agriculture ministers of the European Union are meeting in Brussels. Farmers' unions say despite recent concessions made by European officials, they are still being treated unfairly. The EU has recently watered down some of its environmental norms for the agriculture sector to reduce the burden on the farmers. But protesters say that only benefits some richer farmers. They're asking the EU for more subsidies in a way that increases their profitability. They're also against the bloc's trade policies, which they allege could flood European markets with cheaper imports. This comes just a day after New Zealand announced that its FTA with the EU will come into force in May. The EU is currently working on another trade deal with Latin American countries, including agricultural powerhouses Brazil and Argentina.
Farmers say it could render the small agri-businesses in the EU uncompetitive. For months, farmers across the 27-nation bloc have been holding demonstrations against their national government policies and also against the EU's green laws. As the June European Parliament elections approach, far-right parties are expected to capitalize on the farmers' anger. Now, EU officials say they are committed to improving conditions for farmers, but the protesters argue EU's policies haven't gone far enough in ensuring they get a fair price for their produce. Ishan Garg in Brussels, reporting for DD India.
Farmers in Britain protested in London on Monday over food imports. A convoy of tractors drove outside Britain's parliament to protest against post-Brexit trade deals and substandard food imports in the latest demonstrations by farmers globally. Farmers with Union Jack flags and signs such as "No farmers, no food, no future" were demanding that the government should take steps to improve the country's food security. The rally follows protests by farmers across Europe who are angered by competition from cheaper imports and want stricter environmental regulations. Over 100 Nigerian students and staff who were kidnapped earlier this month were freed by the army on Sunday. They arrived at a local government building in Kaduna on Monday. The army announced on Sunday it had rescued 137 hostages in the neighboring state of Zamfara, days before a deadline to pay a 1 billion Nigerian currency naira ransom for their release. They were kidnapped earlier this month. School officials and residents put the number of students kidnapped on March 7th in the town of Kuriga in the northwestern state of Kaduna at 287, while Governor Ubazani put the figure at over 200. A quick look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the world. Migrants and activists held a memorial ceremony on Monday ahead of the first anniversary of the deadly fire at a Mexican migrant detention center. Last year, on 27th of March, a fire broke out at a detention center run by Mexico's National Migration Institute in Ciudad Juarez, killing 40 people. Snakes, frogs and a crocodile took center stage in a new exhibit opening at London Zoo. There are 33 different species, many of whom are very threatened in the wild. Among those endangered are the mountain chicken frog and the Laos warty newt, which the zoo has successfully bred on location for the first time. A baby western lowland gorilla born last month delighted visitors at the London Zoo on Monday. Mum Effie gave birth to the infant on February 8th, just a few weeks after another gorilla called Miyuku had her baby. Both the important additions will be a boon to the endangered species program. You're watching DD India News Hour. We're heading for a short break, but after the break, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar winds up his 3-day visit to Singapore. Stay with us to know the takeaways. Amidst the poll fever, we tell you ahead the unstinting contribution of Indian women in shaping the nation's political landscape. And strawberry farming is giving a new lease of life to self-help groups in the eastern Indian state of Odisha.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. A quick relook at the top stories once again. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu cancels high-level Israeli delegation's planned visit to Washington after US abstains from UN resolution calling for Gaza ceasefire. Hush money case continues to haunt Donald Trump. A New York judge sets April 15th as the trial date. Odds that Trump will face at least one verdict before facing voters on November 5 increase. Russian president says radical Islamists carried out the concert attack. Suggests Kyiv may have played a role. Ukraine denies any involvement. Death toll from the attack rises to 139. Virat Kohli's 100 T20 half-century sphered Royal challenges Bengaluru to a 4-wicket win over Punjab Kings. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, wrapped up his 3-day visit to Singapore. During his visit, the minister had several bilateral engagements with the leadership and senior Singaporean ministers. During the meeting, views were exchanged on deepening and engagement in the identified pillars of cooperation, including fintech, digitalization, green economy, skills development, and food security. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar also met his Singaporean counterpart, Vivian Balakrishnan. Both the leaders discussed bilateral, regional, and global issues of mutual interest. During his visit, the minister also paid homage to Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose in Singapore. He met members of the Indian community and interacted with them. The visit presented an opportunity to further deepen the strategic partnership between India and Singapore and to take stock of progress in several areas of cooperation. Wrapping up his Singapore visit, the minister will be travelling to Philippines and Malaysia to drive bilateral relations and discuss regional issues. India, at the forefront of championing gender equality and women empowerment, took center stage at the 68th Annual Commission on the Status of Women held in New York from March 11 to 22nd. Hosted by Permanent Mission of India to the UN, the 68th Commission on the Status of Women featured 4 thought-provoking side events delving into key issues impacting women. During multiple panel discussions, 3 of which were in collaboration with the UN Women India and 1 with All India Women's Education Fund Association, India led the conversations on crucial topics such as financing for gender equality, women-led development, and prevention of gender-based violence. India's participation in the session underscored its unwavering dedication to advancing gender equality and women's empowerment on the global stage. India continues to pave the way towards a more inclusive and equitable world by fostering collaboration, celebrating women's leadership, and implementing concrete initiatives. To resolve marine pollution in the ASEAN region, besides bolstering bilateral cooperation, Indian Coast Guard ship arrived at Manila Bay in Philippines. The Indian Coast Guard ship Samudra Pehredar, a specialized pollution control vessel aimed at demonstration of marine pollution response capabilities and shared concern and resolve towards marine pollution in the ASEAN region, besides bolstering bilateral cooperation with Philippine Coast Guard. The deployment is 3rd in the row by Indian Coast Guard to the ASEAN countries. The ship is equipped with specialized marine pollution control equipment and Chetak helicopter in pollution response configuration, designed to contain, recover spilled oil and augment the operation. And now we turn focus at what's happening in India in the run-up to the world's largest democratic election. India, holding the title of world's largest democracy, is about to embark on its next general elections. This time, the spotlight is on the influential contribution of Indian women in shaping the nation's political landscape. Let's take a look.
As India, the world's largest democracy, gears up for the upcoming general elections, the spotlight shines on the powerful participation of Indian women in shaping the nation's political landscape. From the beginning of the Constitution, Indian women have been granted the right to vote, which is the cornerstone of democracy. However, the actual turnout of women voters has often been lower than that of men. Various factors, including socio-economic issues, may have led to this situation. But now, the tide seems to be turning. The gender gap in voter turnout has significantly reduced in recent years, with 65.63% of women exercising their right to vote in the 2014 parliamentary elections, demonstrating the growing political involvement of Indian women. In 16 out of 29 states, more women turned out to vote than men, highlighting their substantial influence in shaping the nation's political landscape. In the 2019 Lok Sabha election, which was a historic moment in the country's post-independence era, 77 women were elected as members of Lok Sabha. Additionally, there are over 1.45 million or 46% women elected representatives in Panchayati Raj institutions, surpassing the mandatory representation of 33%. The 73rd and 74th Amendments 1992 to the Constitution of India have reserved 1/3 seats in the Panchayat and municipalities for women. India is presently one of the only 15 countries in the world with a woman head of state. Globally, India has the largest absolute number of elected women representatives in local governments. Also, for the first time, women voters outnumbered men in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. Similarly, the participation of women in Indian politics is on the rise. On 19 September 2023, India's Prime Minister introduced the historic Nari Shakti Vandan Abhiniyam Women's Reservation Bill, which seeks to provide a 33% quota for women in Lok Sabha and state assemblies. It can only come into effect after a delimitation based on a census conducted after the bill has been passed, with the next delimitation scheduled for 2026. As India prepares for another historic election, the women of this diverse and vibrant nation are set to make their voices heard, once again proving that they are an integral part of the democratic fabric of India. Sujata Lochab, DD India.
Bengaluru, known as the IT capital of India, is reeling under a severe water shortage. Now, the crisis has snowballed into political war to include the Mekedatu Reservoir project in the election manifestos of the political parties. Now, the drastic situation is likely to remain until June as the peak summer approaches with dried bowels and depleting water levels in the reservoirs. We get to more in this report.
The sight of empty pots, long queues and water tankers has become a regular feature in Bangalore. The water crisis has worsened this year due to low rainfall, leading to the drying up of borewells and reservoirs.
The two largest lakes in Bangalore, Bengaluru and Vartur, with a water spread of 500 hectares, have been desilted and drained and do not have any water for the last 5 years. If that project had been completed 3 years back and if they were full of water, the groundwater would have been recharged and there would have been no groundwater crisis. So this meeting, the delay in both these projects has caused this crisis.
One of the most prominent factors contributing to the crisis is fast urbanization, with poor planning and a lack of water management. Encroachment on lakes has further exacerbated the situation. The government's quick fix solution of supplying water through tankers comes with a huge price tag.
And in addition to that, the middle income group areas, we are supplying the water through the tankers. About 230 tankers are in place and they are all supplying to the stressed out areas. So the immediate and short term measures are already taken now. Now medium term and long term measures are underway.
Suburban areas like Whitefield, Senegal and Electronic City are facing severe water shortages. Many techies are demanding to work from home, while others are considering moving back to their hometowns due to the difficulties of living without water supply. Women are protesting on the streets against the construction and water mafia.
We are staying 6 members but 5 buckets is not sufficient for us. It's not enough. We require 10 buckets. We need solution from water problems.
With Bengaluru's growth, The water requirement per day is 2,600 million litre per day, but the city gets only 1,450 million litre per day. 650 mld water is sourced from borewells. 500 mld is shortfall. The Mekedatu Reservoir project aims to meet Bangalore's drinking water requirements by adding 4.75 TMC water. However, Tamil Nadu opposes the project, with the DMK stating in its manifesto that it will not allow the project on the Karnataka side. Former Prime Minister Deve Gowda has urged all parties in Karnataka to counter this opposition and commit to building the reservoir.
It is known to the Prime Minister. It is known to the Irrigation Minister. It has been published in all newspapers how the people for the drinking water, they are suffering.
Water experts fear the worst is still to come in April and May. The city has lost nearly 70% of its green cover in the last 50 years. The long-term solution lies in the overall management of water and natural resources, failing which the city will be left high and dry. Aisha Khanum reports for DD India.
The festival of Holi was celebrated around the world, including in countries with a large Indian diaspora. In London, events were held throughout the weekend in the lead up to the holiday and continued into Monday as well. DD India's Julia Chapman went along to get a glimpse of some of the festivities there.
I'm here in central London, outside Cinnamon Kitchen, where they have been celebrating Holi at this House of Holi pod outside the restaurant for Indians and British people alike. And I'm joined now by Tarika, who's the marketing executive of Cinnamon Group. Tarika, tell us a little bit about this event and how long you've been doing it.
Well, we've been doing it for about 7 years now, and it is to celebrate Holi, which in India, depending on where you come from in India, they'll have a different story as to the origins. But essentially, it represents, the triumph of good over evil. It represents the coming of spring. It represents just celebration.
And how many days have you been running this pod?
Well, we've been running it for about 10 days now. Today is the last day. Of course, we have to end with a bang on Holi.
And how many visitors have you seen? Has there been a mix of people, different backgrounds?
Completely different mix of people, actually. We've, of course, had a couple of Indian, British people, but of course, people from everywhere else in the world as well, who are just very excited to take part in something that is so unique to them.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about the throwing of the colours. What is that meant to be about?
Well, in terms of mythology, it is believed that a god that we pray to named Krishna, his skin was slightly darker in color, and he would bother his mother about it. And he would just ask his mama, why is my skin color so much darker than all my friends? So she got so fed up with his questions that she gave him a whole packet of colors, and she said, go color them whatever you want. So that's where this throwing of colors comes from.
And how important do you think events like this are to help people stay in touch with their culture?
Quite very important, actually. If you were in India, there isn't a place that you could go, whether it's just to the bus stop, anywhere on the streets, where you wouldn't get bombarded with colors. And then you step away from that and it's so easy to forget. So one, for us to keep in touch, but also for us to introduce the rest of the world to our culture as well, I think is very important.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Tarika. So that's it from here at the Cinnamon Kitchen in central London. Happy Holi to you.
All right, up next we take a look at other stories that are making it to the headlines from across India now. Strawberry farming is giving a new lease of life to self-help groups in the eastern Indian state of Odisha. The farming is increasing their income and improving their quality of life in the rural areas. With the festival of colours, that is Holi, being celebrated all over India, the border guarding troops of SSB along the Nepal-Bhutan border joined the fervour. The soldiers played with colours and danced with their comrades. In the state of West Bengal, people celebrated the Festival of Colours with poetry and spring traditions. At Shantiniketan, home of legendary poet Rabindranath Tagore, people gathered to celebrate as they sang songs of the poet and welcomed spring with colours. A unique Holi carnival was organised in the western Indian state of Rajasthan on Monday. People donned varied costumes and paraded the streets with drums and songs. Alright, so that was about the Holi festivities. And up next, we're heading for a short break. But after the break, Boeing Chief Executive and Chairman David Calhoun just stepped down. Virat Kohli becomes the first Indian to register 150 plus scores in T20s. And in Poland, decorated enormous Easter eggs with designs celebrating the heritage of the region are on display.
That never stops, where information shapes our reality. One app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. Let's get you updates from the world of business now. Boeing's board has begun the search for a big hitter to take the helm of the troubled plane maker following the turbulent tenure of CEO Dave Collin, with many industry executives and analysts predicting it will seek an outside remedy. Facing mounting pressure from airlines, regulators and investors, Boeing on Monday announced a broader than expected shake-up, with Collin stepping down by year-end on the heels of the company's commercial plane-making chief and its chairman. The US plane maker has been wrestling with a growing crisis following a January mid-air panel blowout on a 737 MAX plane. US stocks lost ground at the start of a holiday-shortened weekend on Monday as investors positioned themselves ahead of inflation data. All the three major US stock indices ended the session in the red, with the blue-chip Dow suffering the largest percentage loss. The dollar dipped as the risk of yen intervention loomed, and it came under pressure from China's government-supported yuan rally. Oil prices were on track to gain for a second straight day on Tuesday after setting up more than $1 on expectations of tighter supply driven by Russian production cuts and attacks on Russian refineries. Brent crude rose 23 cents to $86.98 a barrel, while US crude futures climbed 28 cents to $82.23. Talking of sports now, we'll get you the action from IPL. Virat Kohli's 100 T20 half-century shepherded Royal Challengers Bengaluru to a 4-wicket win over Punjab Kings in Bengaluru on Monday night. Chasing 177, Kohli made the most of an early reprieve when he was yet to open his account. The Indian star batter scored 77 to set the platform for RCB to get off the mark. Dinesh Karthik and impact player Mahipal Lomror provided the finishing touches at death to take RCB over the line with 4 balls to spare. Punjab bowlers Harshal Patel, Sam Curran and Arshdeep Singh wilted the pressure. Also, earlier RCB managed to keep a lid on Punjab, scoring all through the power play. Pacer Yash Dayal was impressive, hitting the right length and getting movement both ways. Skipper Shikhar Dhawan top scored with 45, while other batters made valuable contribution to take the visitors to a modest total of 176 for the loss of 6 wickets. Virat Kohli notched up his 100th 50-plus score in T20 cricket during Royal Challengers Bengaluru's IPL 2024 match against Punjab Kings in Bengaluru. Kohli got a reprieve on 0. He made the most of the chance and reached to a half-century, the 51st in IPL in 31 balls. In T20 cricket, Kohli has scored 8 centuries and 92 50s. Out of these, 1 century and 37 50s have come in international matches. Chris Gayle leads the list with 110 50-plus totals in the format, closely followed by David Warner in second place, who has 109 such scores to his name. Kohli is at the 3rd position. Chennai Super Kings is all set to take on Gujarat Titans in the next battle of IPL today in Chennai. Both teams have already played once this season and have won their respective games. Chennai beat Royal Challengers Bengaluru by 6 wickets, while Gujarat Titans got the better of Mumbai Indians by 6 runs. Chennai are currently ranked second on the points table, while Gujarat Titans are currently ranked fourth on the points table. Both teams last played against each other in the final of the IPL as well. Top seeds Carlos Alcaraz dominated Gael Monfils 6-2, 6-4, and fourth seed Alexander Zverev escaped a tight first set en route to a 7-6, 6-3 win over Christopher Eubanks to reach the last 18 at the Miami Open. Alcaraz is on a quest to capture the Sunshine Double after his triumph at Indian Wells, and the 20-year-old was never really threatened in a matchup of two of the game's most entertaining players. The Spaniard appeared to be cruising to the finish line when he served for the match, leading 5-2. But Monfils rifled a forehand winner to break and extend the match. The comeback would prove short-lived. However, with Alcaraz deploying a textbook serve and volley on his first match point to seal the win with a love hold. Alcaraz, who won the tournament in 2022, will next face Italy's Lorenzo Musetti. More in tennis, Caroline Garcia pulled off a gritty 6-3, 1-6, 6-2 upset of the third seed Coco Gauff to book her first trip to the Miami Open quarterfinals. Frenchwoman Garcia's serve was clicking early, and she never faced a break point in the opening set before Gauff raised her level to even the affair at a set apiece. In the pivotal first game of the deciding set, Garcia took a 2-0 lead and did not relinquish against her 20-year-old American opponent. Next up for Garcia is American Danielle Collins, who beat Sorana Cristia 6-3, 6-2. Meanwhile, fourth seed Elena Rybakina powered past Madison Keys 6-3, 7-5. Ahead of Easter Sunday, primary school students in Poland decorated enormous Easter eggs with designs celebrating the heritage of the region. 20 decorated eggs will be on display at the Riviera Shopping Center until 5th of April. Alright, with those beautiful and creative visuals, we end this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and also Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.